Hello dear students, in our last class we have discussed how the translation process occurs and how the information from the language of nucleotides is translated into the language of amino acids, that is protein, in this process of translation. Today we will discuss the actual process of translation in the prokaryotes. Now if we can just go back and recall, I hope by this time you have already listened to the previous class and you have just gone through this at least once, you have read it, so that it will be easier to understand today's topic. Now in the previous class you may remember that we have said that the key for the translation from one language to another lies in the 3-letter genetic codes and how each individual codon will code for one particular amino acid. Now the question is, you need to remember that the key here lies in somebody at the middle who need to recognize both the parts of the information. That is, on one hand there is this, say this is our mRNA. So here I have a codon, say XYZ, and this codon is coding for a particular amino acid, say amino acid X. So these are the two languages. On the one hand we have the language of the nucleotide, and on the other hand we have the language of the amino acid. So who is this, or which particular molecule is at the middle, who will know both these informations and match them and connect them? So in the previous class also we have mentioned that this particular molecule is our tRNA, which is the adapter RNA. So what does tRNA do? tRNA has information about both. How? So tRNA, as we have seen, on one hand here it has the anticodon which is complementary to the codon, so it has the knowledge about the codon, so it reads it. On the other hand, on its 3' end, it can bind with the exactly correct amino acid that should be corresponding to this codon. So tRNA must have both these knowledges. So you can understand that it is very, very essential that a tRNA having a particular anticodon is attached with the very specific and correct amino acid. Because if this process does not take place, then the entire reading, the entire system of the reading of genetic code will fall apart. So how does this happen? This we will mention first and then we will go to the actual process of translation. So this process, that a particular tRNA having a particular anticodon is bound with the specific and correct amino acid, is done by a set of enzymes. And these set of enzymes are known as amino acyl tRNA synthetase. So this group of enzyme, also not directly associated with the process of translation, are as important if not more for the proper translation process to take place. So we will just see how this group of enzymes they work. Okay. So say this is our tRNA. Say this is our tRNA. tRNA for, say, for X amino acid. Okay. So at this 3' end of the tRNA, we have the, you must know from your knowledge of nucleotide or nucleic acid chemistry that at the 3' end there is a CCA. Okay. And at this A there is the 3' end free OH group. Now this tRNA has to be attached at this 3' OH group. Your particular amino acid, say this is say this is amino acid X. Okay, so the R group may be X. So this amino acid will bind to this OH group of the tRNA by forming an ester bond between these two, this hydroxyl group and this carboxylic group. They will form an ester bond, and by that they will bind. So what will happen? Here this amino acid will be bound here, and this is how this amino acid will bind at this 3' end. This is our 3' end. And this process will be catabolized by the enzyme amino-acyl tRNA synthetase. Amino-acyl tRNA synthetase. Now this amino-acyl tRNA synthetase then actually has the knowledge of connecting the dots, that is connecting the knowledge of which tRNA with which anticodon must be attached to which particular amino acid. So these groups of enzymes are absolutely essential. And this form of tRNA, where the tRNA has been attached with the amino acid, corresponding amino acid, is known as amino-acylated tRNA, or it is also sometimes called charged tRNA. In this form, the tRNA is called charged. It has been charged with the amino acid that it has been supposed to be charged with. Amino-acylated or charged tRNA. So if this amino acid, say whatever is the R group, accordingly it will be different amino acids, different tRNA. If it is the tRNA for alanine, this amino acid has to be alanine. If it is for phenylalanine, this amino acid will be phenylalanine, and like that. And in this process, you can see the name is amino-acyl tRNA synthetase. So as you all know, whenever the enzyme is synthetase, there must be use of energy in the process from the direct breakdown of ATP. So obviously here we will need ATP breakdown. So one molecule of ATP is broken down here. Note, ATP is not broken down just to ADP plus PI, but it is broken down to AMP plus PPI. So essentially it utilizes energy of 2 ATP breakdown. When we break down ATP to AMP, it is essentially utilizing energy equivalent to 2 molecules of ATP. Okay, so with this we can understand that how this group of enzymes are very, very essential and important for the integrity of the information in the translation system to be maintained. And therefore in some books, in some literature, these group of enzymes, amino-acyl tRNA synthetase, they are sometimes called to be holding a second genetic code. Sometimes you may be asked, what is a second genetic code? It is the group of enzymes amino-acyl tRNA synthetase, and the information that they have, how to connect the tRNA with proper amino acid, that information is sometimes known as second genetic code. Okay, so with that, now we can now directly go into the actual process of prokaryotic translation. So we will today discuss only the process of translation in the prokaryotes. Okay, so now we directly go into the process of prokaryotic translation. Now, again, from the previous classes of different other molecular biological genetic processes like replication, like transcription, you must by now have understood that any such process has almost always 3 different phases, right? So the 3 phases are initiation, elongation, and termination. We have seen such 3 phases: number 1 initiation, number 2 elongation, and number 3 termination in case of replication, in case of transcription, as well as in case of translation. We will see exactly these 3 phases in which the process will take place. So let us start with the initiation. So the first stage or phase of the translation is initiation. Now you will remember that in the previous class we have seen that how the ribosome, where the translation process occurs, have two subunits, and the two subunits can detach and reattach. We have mentioned that in the previous class. So in prokaryotes the ribosome was 70S, correct? And this 70S ribosome can be broken down into 50S and 30S, two subunits. So at the very beginning of the translation, at the very beginning of initiation, first what happens? The prokaryotic ribosome, that is the 70S ribosome. So the prokaryotic ribosome, that is the 70S ribosome, say this is 30S, this is 50S. At the very beginning, this ribosome will be separated or detached into its two corresponding subunits. So first the two subunits separate from each other, the 50S and 30S, they separate from each other. Now when they separate, they can again reattach, but if they reattach again, the process will not start. So you have to ensure that until and unless the initiation process is preparation phase is completed, they do not reattach. So to ensure that after they detach, they are not reattaching immediately, what we do here, two initiation factors, that is initiation factor 1 and initiation factor 3, we call them IF 1 and 3, they come and bind with the 30S subunit. Okay, so IF 1 and IF 3 will come and bind with the, they will bind with the 30S subunit. And once IF1 and IF3 binds with the 30S subunit, now the 50S cannot reattach with it. And now the initiation process will start with the 30S subunit first. At the very beginning, 50S has no role. It will occur with the 30S subunit. Okay. Now let us see how that happens. So what we have seen, that the 30S subunit has been separated and it has been bound with IF1 and IF3 to ensure that the 50S is not binding with it. Now after this 30S has been separated, next the mRNA that has to be translated, the mRNA, messenger RNA that has to be translated, that mRNA comes, this is our mRNA, this mRNA comes and binds with the 30S subunit. So next what happens, the mRNA comes and binds with the 30S subunit. You still have IF1 and IF3 bound here. Okay. So mRNA comes and binds. Now mRNA just does not bind with the 30S subunit randomly. There is a very specific way the mRNA will bind with the 30S subunit. What is that separate way? Specific way? That specific way is that the initiation codon in the mRNA, from the very beginning the translation will not start. Somewhere down the line from the 5' end, there will be one codon from which the translation will start, and that codon is known as the initiation codon or start codon. Okay, and that start codon is always AUG. So always the translation starts, the actual translation, the amino acid attachment starts from the AUG, one particular AUG codon. So this AUG or initiation codon, so this is our initiation codon. This initiation codon AUG will bind at a very, very specific region in the 30S. It will not bind anywhere. It will bind at a very specific region of the 30S subunit. And what is this region? This is the region which will later become a site known as P site. It is still not P site. Until and unless the two subunits join, you cannot call it P site. But this is the region which in future site that will become P site. Okay, so this is the area which will become the P site. Okay, so here only the AUG or start codon will bind. Now how do you ensure that this AUG binds only here and nowhere else? For that there is another specific sequence which is somewhat upstream or towards the 5' end of the start codon. So if the start codon is here, this is the upstream region. So upstream to AUG or more 5' from the AUG, this region which will not be translated, here there is a specific sequence. Here will be a specific sequence. This sequence is known as Shine-Dalgarno sequence. This is known as Shine-Dalgarno sequence, which will be upstream from the AUG. This Shine-Dalgarno is a purine rich sequence. There can be the sequence, exact sequence can vary a little bit from species to species, but a very common Shine-Dalgarno sequence is AGG-AG. So purine rich, you can see all are purines. So AGG-AG. So this is one of the Shine-Dalgarno sequence. So a Shine-Dalgarno sequence like this will be just upstream of it, and in the 30th subunit, there is a ribosomal RNA. So which ribosomal RNA? Again, in the previous class I have mentioned it will be the 16S rRNA. So the 16S rRNA, which is say present as a part of this 30th ribosomal subunit, this is our 16S rRNA. This 16S rRNA will have a specific sequence which is complementary to the Shine-Dalgarno sequence. So what will happen? This sequence which is complementary to Shine-Dalgarno, it will complementarily bind in a specific region with the Shine-Dalgarno. So once you attach the Shine-Dalgarno here, now it's like a zip. In a zip you just need to fix one point and then the rest will fit. So if you just fit the Shine-Dalgarno in a specific region, then the rest of mRNA automatically will be fixed in a specific pattern, and that specific pattern will be AUG now coming to that site which will later become the P site. Okay, so this is how we fix the mRNA in a very specific manner where the start codon comes in a specific region. Okay. So after this has been ensured that the mRNA has bound in a specific region, now it is time for the tRNA to come. So which tRNA will come? The first tRNA, that is for the initiation AUG codon. Now you need to remember one thing, that this AUG, this is the codon for the amino acid methionine. AUG codon is the code for genetic code for methionine. It codes for methionine. Only in case of the AUG, when this AUG is the initiation place, when the AUG is at the initiation codon area, then it will not code for methionine, but it will code for formyl methionine. Formyl methionine, we call it FMET. This is, if this is methionine, this is FMET. So this is the initiation codon, it will not code for methionine. So if there is any other AUG anywhere else, if there is another AUG, all of them will code for methionine as usual, but only in the initiation point that AUG will not code for methionine, but it will code for formyl methionine. Okay, and so there is a completely separate tRNA also. So for all the AUG in between, which will code methionine, you have a specific tRNA. But only for the AUG that is at the initiation spot, you have a specific different tRNA which will code only for the FMET. Okay, so now what will happen? So now that our mRNA has been fixed in the very specific region, next what will happen? So this is our mRNA. This is our 30S ribosomal subunit. This mRNA has been fixed in a manner so that my AUG is in this specific spot. IF1, IF3 still bound to it. So now what will happen? The initiation tRNA, that is the tRNA for formyl methionine, that will come. So we now just draw the tRNA like this. We are not drawing all of its, four arms, etc. We will just draw it like this. So this is the 5' and 3' end, and at this 3' end we have the F-met amino acylated form with the amino acid already attached, the process we have already discussed. This tRNA will come and it has the anticodon, specific anticodon to bind here. So this tRNA will come and attach here. So this tRNA will come and attach with the base pair with the initiation codon at this specific region. Okay, and here another factor will come, that is initiation factor 2, which remains attached to GTP. Okay, so now another factor IF2 with GTP binds here. So when the tRNA binds, you need an IF2 GTP. Okay, so now this tRNA comes and binds to the specific region. So now we have all this setup ready for the initiation process to, or the translation process to initiate and now go into the next phase, that is the elongation phase. So we have our mRNA. The mRNA is fixed in a very specific manner and the correct tRNA has also come and bound. So now that all these have happened, now the 50S subunit can come back and bind here. So what will happen? Once all this has happened, the 50S subunit will now come back. The 50S subunit will now come back and bind. And who were preventing 50S to bind here? These initiation factors. So their function is served, their purpose is served, that the complex has been formed. So now what will happen? IF1 will go out, IF2 will go out, IF3 will go out, and this GTP, it will be hydrolyzed to GDP plus PI. So in this process, you utilize energy from 1 GTP hydrolysis, that is equivalent to 1 ATP hydrolysis. Okay, so now the complete initiation complex is formed. So how will it look? So this is the 30S, this is our 50S, this is our mRNA, this is the initiation codon, and this is the F-met tRNA bound here. And you see, I am every time drawing it as I have shown, the amino acid binds here with the carboxyl group attached here with the ester bond formation and the amino group being free on the other end. Okay, so this is formed. And not only this, now remember what I said, that after it is completed, after the two subunits get attached, now the particular sites will be formed. It was not completed until the 50S comes back. You can remember that in the previous class I have shown you that the tunnel through which the mRNA passes, that also gets completed when only the two subunits come and attach with themselves. And in that tunnel where the mRNA passes, there are these specific sites, and there will be 3 sites. So the 3 sites will be like this. So this as you know already, I have discussed, this is the P site where the first amino acid tRNA has bound. This is the P site. This is known as the A site. This is the A site, and this is known as the E site. So there are three sites. There are three sites: A site, P site, and E site, which are now formed at the end of initiation complex formation when the 50S and 30S subunit has reattached. Okay, so what are these three sites? A site for amino acyl site. In the elongation phase, we will see the amino acyl tRNAs from now on. All the next amino acyl tRNAs will come and bind at the A site. Only the initiation case, it binds to the P site. All other amino acyl tRNA binds to the A site. So it is amino acyl site. P site is the peptidyl site. The peptide formed remains there. And E is known as the exit site. So these are the three sites that are formed: amino acyl, peptidyl, and the exit site. So now we have completed the formation of our initiation complex, and from this we can now move on to the next phase, that is the elongation. So from here we can move into the next phase, that is the phase of elongation. Correct? So let us move now to the next, that is elongation. So obviously elongation will start from here, from this final initiation complex where you have the 50S ribosome, mRNA, the initiation tRNA, all in their correct positions, right? So now what happens, these sites are such that the initiation codon is now at the P site. We can see the next codon, the very next codon of the start codon, AUG, and then whatever XYZ. So the next codon now comes and sits at the A site. So the orientation is such that the first codon is at the P site, and the very next codon, the very next three nucleotides, they will now sit at the A site. So now what will happen? The amino acyl tRNA for this codon, so for the second codon you will have another amino acyl tRNA, right? So that correct tRNA, say that is amino acid 2. So we have a specific tRNA that will be whatever be that amino acid, that can be alanine, glycine, proline, whatever. So this amino acid 2 for this second codon, this will come and this will bind at the A site. This binding is helped by a factor known as elongation factor TU. In the initiation we had initiation factors IF. In the elongation we have the elongation factor EF. EF, TU. There in elongation we have three elongation factors: EF, TU, EF, TS, and EFG. These are the three elongation factors. In initiation we had three initiation factors: IF1, IF2, IF3. Elongation also we have three elongation factors: EFTU, EFTS, and EFG. Now EFTU will help in the binding of this tRNA to the A site. So tRNA binding at A site is helped by the EFTU. Not only this, it is helped again by hydrolysis of one molecule of GTP. And this EFTU on its part is helped by EFTS. EFTS does not act directly, it helps EFTU to work. Anyway, so what will happen after this? What will be formed? So this is our mRNA. This is our first codon now sitting at the P site. This is the second codon sitting at the A site, right? At the P site, we have our first tRNA, which is bound to the formyl methionine. And now here we have the second tRNA, which is bound to the second amino acid, that is amino acid 2. So now the setup is like this. At P site you have the first tRNA with FMET. At the second A site, the second codon, its corresponding tRNA. So after this, what will happen? Now a very, very interesting thing happens. In the last class, you remember that in the last class I have mentioned that in ribosomes, the actual important enzymatic functions are carried out by RNAs. So they are examples of ribozymes. Now the next step is the most important example of such a ribozyme in action. In 50S subunit, you know there is a 23S rRNA, right? There is a 23S rRNA in the 50S. This rRNA will perform enzymatic action. How? What it will do, it will take this amino acid from the tRNA and pull it and attach it here. So this carboxyl group from this ester bond, it will be removed and it will be transferred to this amino group, and this carboxyl group will bind to this amino group. So what bond will be formed? This is the peptide bond, isn't it? Carboxyl of one amino acid and amino group of another amino acid. So this will be the peptide bond formation. This enzymatic action is known as peptidyl transferase action. Peptidyl transferase action, peptide bond formation through this transfer of the amino acid or peptides. So peptidyl transferase. And who does this? This is the 23S rRNA who is catalyzing this reaction. So this is an example of a ribozyme. This is a ribozyme in action. Okay, so how will it look now? How will it look? So how will it look now? So here the first codon where the first FMET tRNA was bound, this tRNA will now become empty. This will become empty. We have removed this amino acid from here to here. So this becomes empty. This A has OH group. On the other hand, to this second amino acid, second tRNA, see what happens. In this second tRNA, the second amino acid 2 was bound, but to this, now the next our first amino acid, that is the FMET, now is transferred from here to here, isn't it? And this is our peptide bond that has been formed. This is the peptide bond that has been formed. So now we have a dipeptide formed. So now what do we have? At the A site, the second tRNA contains the dipeptide. At the P site, the first tRNA for FMET, this tRNA now becomes empty. It does not contain any more amino acid. Okay. So after this peptide bond is formed, next what happens? Again another very interesting thing happens. What happens? That this entire ribosome, just think about this. This is like a rope, mRNA, and this is the ribosome bound to this rope. Now what will happen? This entire ribosome will shift by one codon towards the 3' end. This entire ribosome, if this is the rope that is fixed and this is your ribosome, this entire ribosome 30S 50S together, it will shift by one codon towards this 3' end. This entire thing will shift. Okay, this entire thing will shift in this direction. This process is known as translocation. This process is known as translocation. The ribosomal shift towards the 3' end. How much? Just one codon. So now you can imagine what will happen. So now you try to understand what is happening. If it shifts one group to that end, one end, so what will happen? If this moves here, so this codon now comes here, isn't it? The first codon now comes to the E site. This is moving here, so this one comes here, this one comes here, isn't it? So the first codon with which our FMET tRNA was bound, it now enters into the E site. The second codon that was in the A site, that now enters into the P site with the second tRNA. To the second tRNA we know already the dipeptide is attached. Correct? And now the next codon, that is the third codon, now enters into the A site. So the first codon moves from P to E, the second codon from A to P, and the third codon, which was here, now enters into the A site. Correct? So this process is known as translocation. So now you can imagine what will happen. If the third codon now enters into the A site, so obviously next one thing I forgot to mention, that this process of translocation previously that I discussed, this process also need another elongation factor, that is the elongation factor G. Okay, and elongation factor G also utilizes one molecule of GTP. So the process of translocation that I just described, this needs elongation factor G and hydrolysis of one molecule of GTP. Okay. So after this has happened and the third codon has entered into the A site, now obviously the next codon will bring the next tRNA. Correct? So let us see. So the next tRNA say this is the third codon. So now for it we have another specific tRNA. Say amino acid 3. This will come and bind, and this process you know will be associated with EFTU and hydrolysis of GTP, like the previous case, binding of the amino acid tRNA to the A site. So this will be done, and also what will happen, this empty tRNA without amino acid from the exit site, this is known as exit site, this empty tRNA will also go out. This empty tRNA will also exit from the exit site. So now what we have, we have the E site now again becoming empty. At the P site, we have the second tRNA bound with the dipeptide. And now at the A site, we have the third tRNA coming. And this will bind with the third amino acid. So this will now come and bind with the containing the third amino acid. It will come here. So now what is the setting? E site has become empty because the empty tRNA, first tRNA has gone out. The third tRNA has bound to the third codon, which is now at the A site. At the P site, you have the peptide group, the dipeptide attached. Next, again you can understand the same thing will be repeated. What will happen? So next, again the peptidyl transferase action. So how peptidyl transferase acts? This peptide here, this peptide group here, this entire peptide group now will be shifted to the A site amino acid. Entire peptide group will be shifted to the A site amino acid by the peptidyl transferase activity of the 23S rRNA. So now what you have? So now what you have? So now at the E site we have empty. At the P site, now this tRNA again, this entire peptide group is shifted here. So this tRNA also again becomes empty. Now this third tRNA, this now contains this amino acid, third amino acid, which now is bound to this by again formation of a new peptide bond, which was already attached to the first amino acid. So you can see this is how the peptide is being formed. And now you can understand the same thing will occur. Again translocation, this comes here, and the next codon enters at the A site. So this empty tRNA now next exits from the E site, and the fourth tRNA now comes and binds to the fourth codon that enters, and like this it keeps on going. So you can now see that what is happening, what is being done. The mRNA, you see the codons are being read one after the another continuously in 5' to 3' direction, isn't it? The codons we are reading from 5' to 3' direction, and the amino acids are added, or the protein is being synthesized, you see, from the N terminal to the C terminal direction, isn't it? So this was one of the features of genetic code I have mentioned, that is collinear, that this will be read in the 5' to 3' direction, and the peptide will be synthesized from N terminal to C terminal end. The first one is at the N terminal end, FMET, and all the newer ones are now coming at the C terminal end. So this will keep on going on like this. So this is the process of elongation. The same thing will be repeated. Amino acid attaches, peptidyl transferase action, translocation. The empty one exits from exit site, new one comes at the again A site. Again peptidyl transferase, again translocation. So this is how this process keeps on going. The codons are being read continuously until the time of termination comes. So initiation and elongation will keep on going as long as it can keep on reading. So with this we finish the discussion on elongation, and now the last part, that is termination. So finally termination. This is easy. So elongation it will keep on reading. So it will keep on reading in this direction, it will keep on reading in this direction. This ribosome will keep on moving from 5' to 3' direction of the mRNA and keep on reading, and accordingly the polypeptide will be elongated from the N terminal end to the C terminal end. This was the N terminal end, F met, formyl methionine, and all the new amino acids are added subsequently one after another. So this elongation will continue until at the A site. Now remember, at the A site the next codon enters. So as long as any codon enters which has a tRNA, the process will continue until a stop codon enters at the A site. So when a stop codon or termination codon enters into the A site, so in this A site, if now after say 100, 150 continuous translation, a stop codon enters. Now what happens? The problem with stop codon is there is no tRNA for the stop codon. Okay, so what will happen if a stop codon enters at the A site? Then there is no tRNA. So no tRNA can come and bind, and then the peptidyl transferase and all these actions can take place. So instead what will happen when a stop codon binds, there will be some termination factors which are known as release factors. Release factor 1 and release factor 2. They will come and bind here. Okay. So when a stop codon enters at the A site, no tRNA is present. Instead, release factors bind here. Right? So what the release factors will do? They will bring water. They will bring water. And water will do what? That at this peptide site or the P site, this tRNA, it contains the amino acid say N, and this continued like this. So the last amino acid that was here, and now there is no tRNA, release factor came and it will bring water and it will hydrolyze this bond. With water it will hydrolyze this bond, and then what will happen? This entire peptide will be released and the translation terminated. So instead of next amino acid, because there is no tRNA or amino acid for stop codon, the entire peptide is now transferred to water, or this bond is hydrolyzed. This ester bond is just broken down with water, and this entire peptide is now released, and as a result the translation now terminates. Okay, so what are the stop codons? There are 3 stop codons: UAA, UAG and UGA. These are the 3 stop codons, and they have 3 specific names of 3 colors. UAA is called ochre, UAG is called amber, and UGA is called opal. If any of you have a hobby of drawing, then you will know individually which color is which one. But if you don't know, just Google it, you will see what color is what. Okay, ochre, amber and opal. Shade of which color? Like ochre is, you know, yellow. Yellow ochre is a particular shade. So similarly, you just see what particular shade, just Google it, you will find. So this is how it is terminated. So this is the entire process. You can see the factors are needed in the initiation. There are 3 initiation factors, IF1, 2, 3. Elongation, 3 elongation factors, EFTU, EFTS and EFG. And in the termination, there are 2 release factors, RF1 and RF2. So this is how the entire process takes place. You just go through this class and please read it from any one textbook. Only one point is left. Just I'll take 2 more minutes. That is how much energy is needed for formation of each peptide bond. So say our amino acid is 100, 150, 200, 1000 amino acid long. So how much energy will be needed? Obviously energy will be needed. So what are the points where energy is needed for each amino acid to be added? During translation, to add each amino acid, how much energy you will have to spend? So see, from the very beginning, at first the energy is expended while the binding of amino acid to the tRNA, that is the amino-acyl tRNA synthetase, right? I have already mentioned at the very beginning of the class. So amino-acyl tRNA synthetase, that step utilizes one ATP to AMP, isn't it? Which is equivalent to expending energy of 2 ATP. ATP to ADP means 1 ATP expended. ATP to AMP means equivalent to 2 ATP. No? Next is the binding of tRNA at A site with EFTU. When they at A site with EFTU, the tRNA was binding. You needed 1 GTP, which is equivalent to 1 ATP. No? And then last, translocation. Peptidyl transferase, no energy is needed. Translocation at that step again with EFG. Here again you need 1 GTP, which is equivalent to 1 ATP. So for each amino acid to be added, the total number of energy you need is 4 ATP. For each amino acid added, 4 ATP has to be expended. So this is a rather energy expensive process. Synthesis of a polypeptide, synthesis of a protein by translation needs or requires a large amount of energy. Correct? So with this we can finish. Please go through this class maybe twice and then read it from any standard textbook. Okay, thank you.